Hey, welcome back guys to Intermediate JavaScript and jQuery programming with JSON and Ajax. My name is Kaustubh Gharge, but you can call me KG. I will be covering session 9 of this Intermediate JavaScript course today. Before we begin, let's look at the session outline. So in this session, we'll be working on the jQuery extension library, used specifically for building user interfaces. There will come some time in your developer journey where you will have to focus more on the user experience and think what's best for the user, for which you'll have to think about building user interfaces which are intuitive. This is where jQuery UI library comes in handy. You can find the library at jQueryui.com. By using this library, you'll be covering organizing information in tab panels, adding the content slider to your site, determining the size and position of page elements, and adding new tooltips. If you do not have fundamentals of JavaScript programming clear, you must take the Introduction to JavaScript course, as well as HTML to understand document object model. Organizing information in tab panels. So in this section, we're going to be seeing how easy it is to organize content in tabs. Let's directly go to the code. We can come back to the slides later. So in here we have a master div with an ID of tabs, which comprises of three divs, which will have content for 3 tabs. And we also have an unordered list, which will include the headers for the tabs. With jQuery UI, we get tabs method for the tabs widget, which will be called on the main div with an ID of tabs here, right here. Let's run the code and see how this looks. Alright, so I have 3 tabs here, right here. And if I go back to the code, I have the content and I have an ID of tabs 1 and tabs 2. And I also have an unordered list with the headers which are referenced to one of these divs. And in the jQuery, all I'm doing is I'm calling in the tabs div and I'm calling in the tabs method. Okay. You can find more information about the events and styling methods, which you can use for the tab panels on jQuery UI documentation website. Moving on. Adding a content slider to your site. Consider a use case where you want to build a new e-commerce site. You want the user to be able to filter through the list of products based on the price. The prices can range from $10 to $500. Now the question is, how will the user filter the products easily? This is where the slider functionality comes in handy. Let's look at some code real quick. Alright. Here, I have a paragraph tag with an input tag for showing the selected amount and div. And a div where we'll show the slider for the selected price. Let's quickly run this and see how this looks. Alright, so I have a label here and I have this input element here which shows the current value. If I move the slider, the value changes. Alright, let's look at the jQuery code to understand the slider. Here I've attached slider simply to the div with an ID of slider and added the configuration options such as value, which will show the default value when the slider loads for the first time. So in this case it is 100. So when the web page loads, the default value will be 100. And we also have minimum and maximum values for the slider. So minimum is 0 and maximum is 500. And step, which will indicate the incremental or decremental steps we need to take when slider is moved. Here it is 50, which means if you move the slider to the right, the price will increase by $50. Now with the slide event, we are capturing here, we're setting the value for the amount of input box in the ID amount. Okay, so whenever we slide, we're changing the amount value. And that's what you're seeing right here. Okay, You can further check the documentation on jQueryUI.com to see what other customizations and variations you can build using the slider function. Again, I will provide all the code that I'm showing here today on my GitHub page. You can always go there and see and play around with it, and I strongly encourage you to build your own customizations based off the code I'm providing you. Moving on. Determining the size and position of page elements. This is relatively simple, and you do not require to use the jQuery UI library. All you have to do is call upon the width and height methods of a particular element to get its size. And you can also call upon the position method to get the element's position. Let's look at the code real quick. So let me run this and show you how this looks first. It's just a single div with a color. Oops, I think I ran the wrong. Hold on. Alright, it's just a single div with a red color filled in. This has properties. This has properties of height of 700 and width of 500 pixels. Okay, and I'm going to be logging them out using the height and the width method on this particular element. So the element is the random, right? The ID of random, and the element is div. So if I go back here and if I open up my console, you can ignore these two errors. So the first log you see is that of height. So I'm calling it using height. And the second log is that of width. So that's 500. So you can see that's correct because I set the height to be 700 and the width to be 500. So let's say if I change this to, let's say 700, and if I save this, it will show 700. Right? Perfect. And the last one is I'm calling the position method to get the position of the element. So the padding from top is about 8 pixels and from the left is about 8 pixels. So that's the position of the element. The size and position information of page elements is particularly important if you want the design to be responsive, if you want to build a responsive design, and if you want to rearrange some elements on the web page after an event like getting data from backend server. Moving on. Adding tooltips. Tooltips are short descriptions of elements which a user sees to get more information. Tooltips can be attached to any element. When you hover over the element with your mouse cursor, you can see the description. Tooltips are also useful for form elements, which we'll see in a moment, to show how additional information in the context of each field. Let's look at the code real quick. Let me show you the form. So I have a simple form inside a div with first name, last name, and the address. And let me quickly run this code to show you the tooltip. So I have a form here, and if I move my cursor over to any of the input elements, I will see a tooltip. It says, please provide your first name. Over here it says, please provide your last name. And it says, please provide your home or work address. So this is a tooltip that we are showing the user when the user moves their cursor over the input element to give them more information about what the expected input is. Let's move back to the code. So in the jQuery here, what I've done is I'm actually collecting all of the elements which have title attribute. So if I scroll down here, I have title attribute for all of the input elements with some value. Okay, so and I'm attaching a tooltip method to it with the position configuration. So position is like how we want to show the description of that particular tooltip. Okay, so I'm positioning it to the right, and I'm positioning it so that there's no collision if the two tooltips collide. Okay, you can find more information on the jQuery UI documentation, and you can use it to customize according to your use case. Moving back. So in this session, we learned about an extension library called jQuery UI to build better user interfaces. Some of the elements we covered were organizing the content in tabs, using sliders, and tooltips. That's it for today. I will see you in the next session. Take care. Bye-bye.